Hi, I'm Sabrina, and this is an episode of the Place West podcast. We're filming this podcast today in light of International Women's Day, which is a global day to celebrate the achievements of women and bring awareness to women's equality. For this very special episode, we have Kylie Martin joining us. Kylie is the Chief Operating Officer at IPP, and she's an exceptional woman and an exceptional leader. So it was only fitting that we have her on board for this episode. So hello and welcome, Kylie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on board. It would have been fantastic, as we were saying just before, if we could have done this in person. I know we had a whole plan for breakfast and catching up and doing the podcast, but thank you, COVID. Here we are anyway.
Yes, but thankfully in an office, which is nice.
Yes, that's a great point. So I wanted to kick off today looking a bit at your professional background. So at Place OS, a number of us have spoken about how we've all ended up here largely by accident. I know John, our CEO, has accidental smart workplace expert in his LinkedIn bio, and it definitely wasn't something I thought about in high school or at uni. So what was your journey like to get you to the technology transformation space and working in the building industry?
So funny that you say that because, yes, almost everything that I do has been by accident. But Steve Jobs, he gave an amazing speech to a university once, and he said that career makes sense in hindsight. So when you look back, it all makes sense and comes together, towards the end of your career or where you find yourself. And I feel like that's the same for me and where it comes to technology especially. But I suppose the key roles that I had going back some time, and it's looking further and further back as we go, is that I had some amazing opportunities working with NAB. And one of those was in my early career where I was able to work on the design and delivery of their new open plan branches, which is decades ago now. But that included the delivery and design of their sort of fast service wall technology, which was quite new and interesting back then. But I came from a background of banking myself. So I had come into that design work with a more practical lens, but was certainly introduced to technology and design and workplace design at that point. And what fascinated me about that work was actually the psychology of security and how technology and design could affect the psychology of both the customers and our staff. And that probably started an interest that I didn't really recognise at the time. So I had a long, very enjoyable career with them, covering all sorts of roles in operational leadership and third-party operations, and eventually finishing leading their security practice. Before I ran away to toll logistics and worked in security and crisis management globally for a couple of years, which extended my understanding of technology and security. And then finally coming over here to IPP Consulting, where I've managed as a program manager in technology design, as well as now as Chief Operating Officer. So that is the very cut down version, but all of those pieces have really come together to make sense for where I find myself today. And I feel really lucky to be here, and I feel like I bring something different to the lens of technology.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you speak about the psychology of people and of the workplace, because I feel like people are so central to workplace and to buildings and to the technology transformation that we're talking about. And I know people is a really central component for both your work, but also IPP and your organisation as a whole. So would you mind now telling us a bit about IPP and the company and what your values are and what you're working towards as a consultancy group?
Absolutely. I knew that I was coming to IPP well before I left NAB. I was a client of IPP, and the values that they stand for really shone through and have done for a number of years. IPP provide really bespoke consultancy advice, and I guess where they can be quite different is that their purpose is really about designing for better. So it's not just doing what we did in the last design or the last project. It's actually looking at the problem at hand and understanding it deeply to say, how can we design this to be better for the people that use it? And that might be in the context of a prison or in the context of a workplace or in the context of a hospital. And they're all different. So our teams are just so incredibly focused and so very smart at going through and understanding exactly what they want to achieve. But underpinning all of that, and this comes through in all of our people as well, is this real need to understand what their designs will do for the psychology of the users in that space. And a lot of them have some really, really strong, robust academic background that they can refer to sort of say, when you put this screen here or this tech there or this security camera over there, this is what it will actually do in terms of the problem we're trying to solve. So the smarts, I guess, of the people that work here and the drive behind doing something that's truly better and suited to a problem obviously attracts me. But some of the problems that IPP have really reached to try and solve in terms of protecting people against domestic violence and some of the solutions in healthcare, they're so purposeful, and I find that the board and the leadership team of IPP really reach for those purposeful projects. So all of those things together, I mean, it's a pretty amazing place to work. It's an incredible bunch of people, and we get to do really brilliant things. So it's pretty hard to top.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've spoken a lot during that part about meaningful projects and bringing up concepts like domestic violence and working in healthcare. So I want to use that now as an opportunity to segue into a large purpose of our call today, and that's a focus on International Women's Day. So you're a woman and you're a leader and you're working in technology. What does International Women's Day mean to you? And this year, the theme for this whole conversation is choose to challenge. So what does that mean given your roles and experiences as a woman in technology?
Yeah, I mean, it means a lot. It means a lot to everybody, I think. International Women's Day has been running since 1911, so well over 100 years. And Sabrina, for you and I, according to the World Economic Forum, we still won't see gender parity in our lifetime. And that's just not good enough. And we need to challenge that. And when it comes to technology, it's quite dire, actually. Only 5% of tech startups are started by women. Only 25% of technology jobs across the world are managed by women. And only 11% of executive roles in Fortune 500 roles are held by women. And it's not due to desire or capability. That's not what's going on here. And it's not good for business. The creativity, the innovation, the different thought processes that come in from having greater inclusion and greater equality are worth so much more to business. So we have to challenge these norms and these biases that sit behind these stats, because then they're not good enough. And for the challenges, I guess, the world faces at the moment, we need different thinking, and we need deep thinking, and we need great creativity, and we actually really need greater equality. So it's not just for me or for our kids, but it's actually for the benefit of the solutions that we're all driving for. And obviously I'm really passionate about it. And I feel really lucky for the place that we are, the people that have come before me, the women that have come before me, but also the men and women that have supported me throughout my career to be here. And I feel like, we have a role to play, and, we have a great deal of privilege ourselves that we need to stand upon and help others up. So when it comes to Choose to Challenge and International Women's Day, I'm a huge supporter, and I'm right behind it. And for us, I think it will be about highlighting and understanding where those steps of inequality and bias come in. So many people have seen an exercise. I got to do a fantastic exercise long ago in my career, run by the Benevolent Society, where you all started on a starting line and you took a number of steps forward depending on a series of questions you were asked. Were you educated? Were your family together? Did you get dinner every night? And, some people ended up 15, 20 steps ahead of others that were back on the starting line. And that is what inequality and privilege looks like. And sadly, the bias is that those that are standing 20 paces forward don't realise they're standing so far forward and mistakenly believe that it's something that they've done to maybe push them that far ahead. And that's not the case. So we really need to highlight all those little things that make up those steps. And that's hard work, and it's difficult. So Choose to Challenge for me is trying to highlight those and those little messages that are incorrect about women especially, but I guess all forms of inequality in the workplace, and driving for change in the way that we see equality and the purpose of it and the value in it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I've definitely noticed a trend when people are talking about feminism or equality for women or any other minority group or disadvantaged group, that people think, we're asking for them to have more opportunities or have like better access or have more support or more funding, but it's not. It's asking for equality. It's asking for people that are those 15 or 20 steps back to just have the same opportunity and the same like access to all of the resources that other people of society with more privilege have.
Mm,
Um, and I agree completely when you spoke as well about diversity bringing creativity. And when I spoke about International Women's Day internally prior to this podcast, that was one of the main concepts that we spoke about and was synonymous amongst the leadership team, was that it makes sense as a business, even if you take the moral and the
mm,
ethics out of it, having
yeah,
that creativity will drive business and will drive better business practices.
yeah.
Um, so completely on the same page there. And
Mm,
one thing that I thought about when looking at Choose to Challenge as the theme for International Women's Day this year was looking at individual responsibility. So it doesn't have to be a huge policy change, or it doesn't have to be a new corporate initiative or a new charity. It can just be choosing to challenge your own understanding of equality and challenging people in your immediate network, be that personal or professional, and creating micro impacts just in your own network can result and accumulate to that huge change.
absolutely. And hopefully we get to do some of that in our day-to-day work at IPP. So we're really fortunate to be able to do that. And again, we've got such a great group of people, men and women. And I believe, in teams like this and like yours, that will continue to highlight, what's needed to make a change here and how can we bring in different voices. Certainly not try and change the voices that are coming in to be more like the other voices that are already in the room. And I think that's important, that we do stand up and have a voice and have that confidence of what's come before us to say, no, I've got something important to say here and I'm going to add it into the dialogue. So, International Women's Day, I think, will continue to be incredibly important, but we do need to challenge all those small things because the small things are the big things in the end.
Yeah, definitely. And are there any women either in the technology space or outside of the technology space that you think are really doing a good job of choosing to challenge, or just that you want to recognize as awesome female leaders in the space?
Oh, so many. I actually couldn't name
Yeah.
them all, and that goes from the friendship groups you have that support you every day in the wins and the losses, to the people in business that I could name many of that have supported me through, but also the men that are real champions of women and really put them forward for
Yeah.
opportunities, which is so important. And I've been lucky to have so many men support me throughout my career as well. But this year, actually, at IPP, we've decided, I know this podcast will be launched in the week of International Women's Day, so this will have been done and dusted. But actually, our leadership team has selected one female each that they would like to recognise for their support, inspiration, or something that they have done that has changed the way that they operate and they work in the work that they do. And we've sent some personalised gifts and messages to them to say thank you for being there and being that inspirational, magical woman. So we're doing that sort of privately from IPP as a special thanks to those women that make us what we are and help us to create the solutions we do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, congrats in advance to those women at IPP. So I want to now look, if we go back to the smart workplace focus, I want to take a look at what are some of the challenges that you face as a consultant when you're pushing for so much change and pushing customers out of their comfort zone. That must be quite potentially frustrating at times to see all of the opportunities over here, but see people thinking over here. How do you overcome that?
Yes. Well, sometimes it's really energizing, though, to see where those opportunities lie. I think the big challenge as a consultant is that people are so keen to jump straight to a solution. And the question we're asked so often is, what is the answer? And our answer is, we don't yet know your question. So the way that we do try to tackle these problems is to try and go in and understand exactly the context of the business, what the business is trying to achieve, what the workplace is trying to achieve, and what the future might look like for them. And that's really important because it's different for all workplaces. They're not the same, and they have different drivers and different priorities that need to be addressed. Technology should be an enabler. It's not the answer. So it's part of a system that goes with people and process, obviously. So understanding exactly what the drivers are of that business helps us to understand where we would point a client to when it comes to technology intervention and enablement. And indeed, much of the time, absence of technology and the very deliberate absence of technology in some places to drive certain behaviours or nudge certain behaviours. So I guess back to your question, the challenge is allowing us to take that time to understand the question so that we can get to the right answer, not just an answer.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And that's a very similar challenge that we experience at PlaceOS when selling a platform, because the whole point of our product is that you can do anything with it. You can
Yeah.
create any workplace experience. It can be used in any market vertical. It allows you to connect any technology together. And then we have customers will say like, oh, like, what's your solution for desk booking or for, whatever it is? And we say, well,
What are you
we
trying
ask
to
those
do?
same questions. Yeah, what are you trying to do? Like, what is the user experience you're trying to create? And then work from there. So I can completely resonate with that frustration.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's that it's the impossibility of infinity that you can do anything with the technology and the data, and
yeah.
not having clear boundaries make sort of an insecure place to operate in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what are some of the trends and opportunities that you're seeing in the smart workplace experience, in the smart workplace area and the smart buildings space? What are some things that either customers are demanding or things that they're not demanding that you're seeing in the future could be an opportunity?
Well, I think COVID has obviously changed a lot, but some of the persistent trends that we were seeing, and certainly some of the global best practices that we're seeing in smart buildings or smart workplace, really related to having control in your hands. So the mobile as your key platform for doing things that you wanted to do, and then also the rise of data that comes from technology. So we're starting to see a real proliferation of data coming out of workplace technology. Over the last year, things have changed and shifted, and there is rightfully a big focus on the response to COVID and flexible working. So I think we're going to see a continued effort in understanding how the hybrid work styles are going to evolve, and that probably surrounds mostly sort of AV and meeting room technology and how you can create an equality between somebody who is in the room and somebody who is not, which also creates incredible opportunities. So when you think about teaching or education that can have so much more reach now, or finding talent pools well beyond your sort of geographic space, this is incredible for workplaces of the future. And then there's some really smart stuff coming out of COVID as well, around, I guess, health and cleanliness within the building, predictive maintenance, use of UVC lighting and how that can be automated. And they are fantastic things as well, and have really broad applications across many facilities. But what I see is coming in the future, and the things that I'm excited to see occur through smart building and smart workplace technology, is how it can be used to drive real well-being. A look at how it can support well standards within buildings and attract people back into the workplace, because it's a great productive collaborative place to be. So how that technology can be used really purposefully for that. Also in the way that it can support and drive a climate change agenda for greater sustainability. And you've got these two really great events that have occurred where there's a higher degree of flexible working and agility in the workplace, and smart BMS systems that can maybe do something really clever that could make some real change to the way energy is used. But I think the underpinning thing for all of that is the challenge that has been there for a number of years, and that is how to manage the data. Where the data goes, how the data's moved, where the data's stored, and how it's analysed for purpose. And I think that's going to continue to be a big challenge over the next decade, across many spheres, but especially smart workplace and smart building design.
Yeah, so many good points there, and so many things that that we're seeing those same trends for. And data is definitely always a central focus and a core philosophy that we speak about in every meeting and pretty much in every video at PlaceOS is that data is not insights. So just having all that data is only the first step, but
Yep.
and having one huge big fancy dashboard with lots of trend logs is only halfway to the solution and to the outcome. It's having technology to be able to interpret that information and work out what is the value of that information for a specific stakeholder. And I think that that's such a valuable role of a consultant to help work out what you can do with all of that information and what that actually means for your business long term and how it continues to transform.
Yeah, absolutely. And that role of smart people that understand how to use data in smart ways to create rules and use cases that make a difference, that actually result in something. And we're lucky to be able to use, I guess, our experience from the physical security world and looking at security operations centres and cybersecurity centres and the way that they use data and a suite of data to come up with rules, alerts, alarms that are meaningful. So we really lean on that background because it's quite mature in those spaces to say, we can see how data can come together for purpose.
Yeah. And picking up from that security conversation, I know previously we've also spoken a lot about multi-tenancy applications and what technology looks like for commercial real estate and the owners and operators of buildings. What do you see happening in that space, and how is security going to be an issue when we're looking at technology moving between lots of groups of people?
Oh, it's that's a tough one because I think that's still evolving, but certainly multi-tenanted buildings are a challenge for developers because they're torn between offering everything to everybody and something that's useful, practical, and actually can be operated. The challenge with the technology that's offered through the building is that it needs to be protected for all of the tenants. So cyber comes up as probably our key concern when it comes to that. But I do think that there is a huge amount of opportunity in creating greater flexibility for tenancies when it comes to multi-tenanted buildings and using technology to allow that flex up and down in a more agile way than typical leases currently allow for. And looking at using the building in a smarter way. So you've got potentially more common spaces, common meeting rooms, common boardrooms, rather than each tenancy having to fit out each of those spaces themselves and them being highly underutilised. I think utilisation and occupancy is going to be a driver of a lot of these changes. But again, it's the cybersecurity that always sits at the back of my mind to sort of say this needs to be protected and operated really well. So developers are going to be challenged to make sure that they can set up their operations to manage their building ongoing well past build.
Yeah. I think that especially with COVID, we'll be seeing a lot more of that co-working and co-shared space evolving as people are sort of moving out of cities or moving to different areas geographically, but still operating under that one corporate. One thing I also wanted to touch on as potentially a last point is you mentioned earlier in the talk about passion projects and healthcare. Is there anything that you're doing of interest in the healthcare space or any new sort of trends in that market vertical?
Yeah, there is. So we do work across healthcare, so hospitals and research centres in terms of the technology that comes into them. There are a lot of different systems, and maybe when it comes to the patchwork quilt of technology that comes into a facility, these are probably at the pinnacle of them. So understanding those integrations and the data between systems is really important to how we can drive a better outcome. But I think probably the biggest trend and biggest challenge facing healthcare in Australia is that the sharing of data and research data in a timely way, so fast, useful information that can be shared immediately, that is going to make the difference to how we understand health challenges across our country and beyond. So there does need to be a greater leverage of the infrastructure, networks, providers, and I guess suppliers to understand how we can move that data in a better way. And there are some great solutions that are coming up that we're certainly looking at there. That doesn't sort of go into some of the specific technologies I know you guys would be looking at, but that use of the network and that underlying infrastructure is just so critical to how we're going to build this these new healthcare facilities. And for us in Australia, there is over $20 billion worth of committed funds to that investment over the next few years in hospitals and healthcare. This is the opportunity to set up for the future. So I am super passionate about making sure that collectively as an industry, we take advantage of this time to make sure that we're setting up for the technology of the future, and that we're going to be able to do the things that we aspire to with the sharing of research data, information, medical information, to get the outcomes to these health challenges in a better way.
Yeah. And I think, as you mentioned, the real time capacity of that is so important. And that's something we're really focusing on in the healthcare space at the moment, both in the physical space and in the virtual space. So, in the physical space, looking at things like, where is that super important piece of equipment that I need right now? Like, where is that asset in the building?
Yeah,
How can I find it? Has it been booked for a particular use? Where is that
yeah,
doctor? But then also in the virtual environment as well, now where we have patients and clinicians and doctors being physically separated due to forces like COVID, and how we can better connect those people in a virtual way as well, and replicate
absolutely.
that same healthcare experience, but online. So there's so many exciting things happening for
There is,
healthcare
and
that we're
it needs a number of minds to come together to talk about how these opportunities are playing out. Certainly some of the innovations from overseas, there's some brilliant stuff going on in Canada and the US in their healthcare technology. But there are great providers with some incredible solutions that really make a change to either the way a hospital can operate logistically and in a better way for patient outcomes. But yes, definitely from that data side, so that we can actually connect what we understand and find about medical incidence issues and concerns so that they can be solved.
yeah, absolutely.
Mm,
Okay, well, thank you. Those were some really awesome insights, and I'm so glad we could take the time to share that today.
absolutely.
So, yeah, thank you so much for joining this podcast.
Thanks, Sabrina. Really appreciate it.